Let's talk about playing around with languages. Hello there, everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, coming to you today with the quick tips for DMs wanting to talk to you about today with playing with languages, mixing and matching different things like dialects, or when two languages intermingle and borrow enough from one another that they just kind of cross-pollinate into something that is radically divergent from both of the originating languages. But before we get into all of that, I just wanted to mention that I apologize for posting basically no videos last week. It was kind of a nice break, but still working and then still working on the project I had in mind, which just hasn't really quite felt right. So I'm taking a little bit more time working on it, thinking about maybe actually writing out a bit more of a script rather than just going from train of thought kind of exposition. But we'll come back to that later after I've put things together just a little bit better. So for today, what am I talking about when it comes to languages? Well, just what we think of when we take a look at these, whether you're playing in your traditional-ish fantasy RPG like Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, Rolemaster. Although Rolemaster's a little bit of an exception to this. The thing is that the languages are, you have Elven, you have Dwarven, you have Human, you have Halfling, you have Gnomish, you have Undercommon, you have High Elven, you have so many different languages, Draconic, Celestial, all different kinds of languages, and it's very cool. It is a part in making the setting feel a bit more fleshed out, a bit more unique, like there's a bit of a character and history there. But you can take this a step further pretty handily by introducing different dialects. I mean, from a historical standpoint, it makes sense because, over time, as people spread out and change according to adapting to their environments, whatever skills that they might have available, the other people that they're interacting with, the challenges that they have, that will influence how their language changes and evolves. For example, several Native American tribes that live up above the Arctic line, like the Eskimos, for example, the Inuit language has, I wanted to say, something like 17, maybe 27 some odd different words for ice. I might be inaccurate on the number of words, but they have all those different words to describe different kinds of ice and snow, and it makes sense. The environment they live in is dominated by snow and ice, so being able to communicate exactly the qualities of the different kinds of snow and ice that they might be dealing with will just convey that information in a much more efficient manner. Now, for somebody else coming in and learning the language who has never spoken it before or has anything related to it as a frame of reference, it's going to be more difficult to get through it and understand it because you have to separate out and understand the different qualities about the object being discussed. So how do you apply something like that to a fantasy setting? Well, get a little bit of thought, but let's take dwarven holds, for example, spread out throughout all different kinds of mountain ranges across continents. They have enough of a degree of separation there that their language is just going to inherently diverge just a bit because they're going to be in different environments with different qualities in weather, temperature, the terrain, the resources available. So they'll become reliant on certain existing words or have to come up whole cloth with new words, whether that's just generating them within their own language, within their alphabet, or by adopting loan words from other local dialects that they're interacting with. Those things will put pressures on that language and cause it to change and grow over time. So if dwarves from the far north in the Ice Jaw mountain range are going to be a culture that's more influenced by the cold, the snow, the ice, the creatures that live there, particularly things like a remoraz or a white dragon or any number of other creatures like that, they're going to reference those more, and that's that's going to be incorporated into the quality of the thoughts that they have. Not to say that they're necessarily of a low quality inherently, it's just the particular qualities that are reflected in that language are going to be reflected more in their culture. They're going to be bedecked more in furs. Things like wooden shield. Most shields are going to be wooden, but a wooden shield will still probably be more comfortable than a majority metal shield. Although it could be a wooden shield with like what the Scandinavian peoples used to have, big round shield with the round metal hoop around the edges to give it a bit more stability, along with that central point on the shield that had that metal cap over it. That would work a great deal and really affect their culture and their mode of dress and how they conduct themselves in that way. But at the core, they're still dwarfs. They're still masters of metalwork, of stonework, plumbing the depths of those mines, bringing back rare minerals and resources that just don't exist in any other mountain range, and bringing them down to more centrally located dwarfen holds. Say the Dagger Spine Mountains, the dwarves of the Dagger Spine mountain holds. They trade with one another, and they have access to trade goods other people don't have, not only because of the minerals located in their region, but also the different kinds of peoples that they trade with. It's a more densely populated region than the far frozen climes of that distant north, where the wind chill just cuts through the layers of clothing and straight down to the bones, leaving you shivering and yearning just for that joyous warmth of a cozy hearth with a good blanket wrapped around you. Those dwarves are going to have fundamentally different experiences from the Dagger Spine Mountain dwarves. Those kinds of differences get highlighted really well, especially when the northern dwarves are more bedecked in furs and more apt to finding ways of keeping themselves warm. The dwarves of the more centrally located part of the continent, they are dressed in lighter clothes. They still have a good deal of metal. It's just the metal features more lighter cloths to help with breathability and help with wicking away sweat and stuff like that. And they're going to have, as I mentioned before, all those different other resources, more different kinds of cattle, meats, vegetables, and fruits that they can trade with their more northern cousins for the different exotic minerals and pelts that they're bringing back down to the south with them. And right there, just by playing around a little bit with language, thinking about how languages can diverge and how their environment influences the languages, you have so much more of a detailed setting that just has its own character, has its own feel. It's going to be very, very distinct from any other campaigns or settings that your players might have had time to mess around with. So how do you reflect that with the player's skills then? Well, just give Dwarfen some sub-dialects. You could almost think of as the original Dwarfen language as kind of like the Dwarfen version of Common, of the common tongues spoken by humankind. And with that being the inroad point, then the characters could either invest a point or points, depending on the system of game you're running. They can invest a point into that Northern Dwarven language so that they better understand it. And you can associate other little penalties or bonuses with understanding a language or without understanding it. So players that just know the common Dwarven tongue, they speak with these northern dwarves from the Icejaw mountain range, and they don't know their particular dialects, so they're a little bit behind on diplomacy because they have an idea on what might offend the dwarves, but they're still taking, say, a -2 penalty to their diplomacy checks. Or they don't have any advantages, but they don't have disadvantage either if you're playing 5th edition. any number of things that you could adjust like that. And so it's easier to slip by different concepts that the player's character may not have a frame of reference for, so they don't really grasp the full meaning of the phrase that's been conveyed to them. And there could be loan words or words created whole cloth from the original Dwarven language to describe something new that just doesn't exist for any of the dialects spoken further down to the south. And so that could be a situation where they misunderstand, or they don't pick up those subtle context clues that would inform them, hey, this person is trying to communicate something different to you, or trying to slip something past you with this turn of phrase. So detecting any kind of subversion, any attempt to bluff on the NPC's part would come in at a penalty for the player character. But there's so many more different things that you can do. Again, just that little bit of thought there, and we have two distinct, interesting cultures that are still at their heart Dwarven through and through. But there's so much more that can be done. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Let me know in the comments down below either way, and we'll try and get to engage in discussion. And don't forget to hit those like or dislike buttons on your way out since you made it this far. And speaking of making it this far, if you've already come down to this point, why not go down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamers Den. Join that incredible roster of legendary heroes. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time. Good gaming to you all, and you all have yourselves a good night.